I'm a little breathless after watching that video, though I've seen it a number of times. I'd like to thank Pooja and Subiksha representing the students of the world in giving us a very important message. And I think it's important that as educators that we realize this is a challenge to all humanity. This video was directed really at the American population, and I think that every accusation or flaw or problem and challenge that we face in American education is true all over the world. And therefore, we need not take this personally. This is a challenge to humanity, and I think it's a message from the young generation of not just students here, but students all over the world, that we need to do better and we can do better. And we're fortunate to have with us here today many people who strongly share that view and that aspiration and that commitment, and are already trying to do many things differently. None of us, as Prince said, none of us claim to have all the answers. There is no one solution within a country, within a field, let alone on a global basis. But there's much we can learn from each other. Much we can learn from what's done, whether it's in Finland or other countries. Nobody can claim to have all the answers. But we all have a challenge. We face a common problem. And we're here to share ideas today. And I'm speaking, as Zarina said, on behalf of really 3 organizations: Mother Service Society, World Academy of Art and Science, World University Consortium. And I'd like to spend a few minutes up front telling you a little about our organizations, just so you know where we're coming from. And we hope in knowing that we will find further opportunities to collaborate with you in future on this and other issues. Mother Service Society was founded in 1970. We were inspired by the teachings of Sri Aurobindo and Mother. Back in 1970, Ashok Natarajan, who you'll be hearing from, his father founded the society. He's known as Karma Yogi, and set up in a rural area the first village adoption program in all of India by a nationalized bank. That program was a great success, and it was spread all over India by the banks. And within 10 years, it had covered about 100,000, 1 lakh villages in India. So our roots were in the development of Indian society, starting in agriculture and agro-industry and agro-crafts and all. Since then, as you can see, our research, we became officially recognized by the government of India as a social science and educational research institution in 1980. And our research has expanded out to many different areas: business management, social development, economy and employment, education, global governance, international security, literary criticism, which you'll hear from Janani Harish about, the very process by which mind becomes creative and thinks originally, and psychology, all of which are directly connected to the process of education and the themes we'll be discussing today. The World Academy of Art and Science was founded in 1960 in Europe and the USA by very prominent intellectuals from around the world, people like Bertrand Russell and Albert Einstein and others, because they felt that the scientific community of the world, the thinkers of the world, had to address serious social challenges facing humanity today. And the Academy has been working since then on all of the issues that you see the Society's been working on. We became an official center of the Academy years ago, and have been working closely with them on the international level in trying to implement these ideas. Out of all of these ideas, the one that we have singled out as most important is education. And in 2013, we helped co-organize with the World Academy a conference at the University of California at Berkeley on the future of education. The focus there was on higher education. We brought together people from top universities in the US and in many other countries to look at how technological changes were opening up new opportunities. And we asked the question, if you were going to try to design a system of higher education that would be affordable, accessible, open to people everywhere, where your goal was to achieve the maximum quality possible in the most accessible manner, how would you do it? That was the question we put before a distinguished audience of thinkers. And I think the one thing we all agreed on was that you wouldn't do it the way we're doing it today. That if you were going to try to create a global system of education with the highest quality, accessible and affordable to all who seek it, all who want it, you would definitely not do it the way today, no matter how valid the system and how much education has served the community in the past. And as a result of that conference, with the support of those present, we set up a new organization called the World University Consortium, which has been working for the last 4 years to try to answer that question. Just 3 months ago in Rome, we had our second international conference on the future of higher education, where we explored what we have learned over the last 4 years, and we brought in a large number of organizations and collaborators who are thinking along similar lines, or at least share the same question. I think most of the participants have received a copy of just a summary report highlighting key themes and conclusions that came out of that conference. We were very, very pleased when Naveen Sharma approached Primrose, our venture the Society's venture in trying to evolve a new approach to education, back in December, and said he would like to bring a team of leading educators who are really seeking to find out answers and how we can improve the primary and secondary educational system in India, wanted to bring them to see our school. Naveen came and met with us, and one of the things we said up front was we're flattered and deeply pleased to meet others who feel that there need to be changes in education, but please don't think please don't bring them here thinking that we have all the answers. If anything, maybe we have all the questions. And we have found a few answers that we found are very valuable, and we're happy to share our experience and our answers with you. We have many other questions that we're trying to address and answer. We have many ideas that we're in the process of implementing to test out. Rather than proven results, we think we're working along lines that we hope you will find valuable, and we equally would like an opportunity to learn from all of you. We live at a time, and Prince kind of touched on this very rapidly, we live in extraordinary times, unprecedented times. And education, if we look back over the last 200 years, it has phenomenally changed the world. We could not be here today if it wasn't for the tremendous strides that we've made in quantity of people who are covered all over the world, the quality, the amount of knowledge we have. It is driving the whole growth of civilization, the economic and political and other forms of development. But our challenge is even greater today than it was 200 years ago. The very speed with which society is changing, the very speed with which we are accumulating new information, poses new challenges to educators, which I'm sure all of you are familiar with. Today we have at our fingertips more information available on our smartphones than the most educated person in the world had access to just a short time ago. We have a system of education, Prince referred to that also in the video, which essentially is the same basic delivery system that was invented in around 1077 when the first university in Europe, University of Bologna, was founded in Italy, where 400 years before the invention of the printing press, before there were printed books, where books were so valuable that if there was a library with books, they were all written by hand, and the books were chained to the shelf so that nobody could take them away because they were so precious. People spent a lifetime just copying books. But essentially we have the same system, a system which made sense 1,000 years ago, maybe even made sense 100 years ago, where young people gather together to learn from somebody who has all the information in their head. Today, all the information that's in anybody's head, and 100 or thousands of times more, is available to all of us on the internet at our fingertips. We have now not only radio and printed books and newspapers and television, we've got information coming from all sides, and yet we still have essentially a one-way broadcasting system that communicates the way I am right now. So there's got to be a better way. And it's not just a question of a better way, but we not only have much more information, but we see evidence, more and more evidence, that the ways in which we are equipping our youth are inadequate to keep up with the rapid changes in society today. Things are just changing too fast. By the time students get out of school or even college, much of what they have learned is already outdated. In fact, our textbooks have a lag time. The textbooks are containing information that was valid 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I know in some cases, Janani, who you'll hear from, she did her master's in computer science at a time where she was learning the coding languages in the textbook that were being taught when I was in college in the 60s. Because the curriculum couldn't keep pace with the knowledge, and how much more true that would be today. So companies are telling us, employers are telling us that it's more and more difficult to find students who are really prepared, who are properly prepared to meet the challenges of the 21st century. And therefore, there's less security for those who go and get an education today, that education is really going to ensure the rest of their career. That's just simply not as true as it was in the past. Even in fields like IT, where India has excelled so much, the IT revolution that drove India was the Y2K problem of year 2000, when the dates changed. And when it was enough if we could teach our engineers how to do basic programming to repair a fundamental defect in the mainframe computers. But today, we need, our IT professionals need to be much more creative. They can't just be doing a mass production work, a technical work. They have to be creating new solutions to new problems. It requires a different mentality. It can't be taught just by following instructions and listening to what you're told and filling out standardized tests. And the standardized test results are not a good indication. We hear this from companies all over the world, are not a good indication of whether somebody's going to make an effective employee or whether they can contribute. We need people who need to think out of the box, who can solve new problems, not just who can follow instructions and repeat and regurgitate back what they've learned. In addition to that, the world is much more complex today than ever before. Life has always been complicated, But the amount of interconnectivity of everything today, every aspect of life, every field of activity is so great that the idea of dividing life into a set of different disciplines and subjects which we learn in the primary or the secondary school or in the universities is simply not a valid approach in a world where everything's connected with everything else. In the US, we teach at the college level more than 1,000 different disciplines and subdisciplines. And the problem with that is that the more you become an expert in a particular discipline or subdiscipline, because there's so much to learn today, the less you learn, the less you know about anything else. I met a leading professor of labor economics from Princeton last year, and I said, oh, well, we are also very interested in the field of employment. And he said, well, I am not an expert in employment. I'm only an expert in labor. And I don't know about you, but in my mind, I thought these two were pretty much connected. But that comes from this infinite splitting of knowledge into smaller and smaller fields. But we can't split life that way. We can't divide life that way. And that's what we do. Our government departments, our university departments, our departments in companies, as well as our subjects in the school are so split up that they no longer even have a semblance of reflecting the complexity of the world in which we live and the holistic reality of the school. So we need to rethink things from first premises. We need, and we're in the World University Consortium and World Academy and in the society, we're looking at how do we integrate knowledge? How do we rethink things at the theoretical level? All of this results in a lot of uncertainty. So we're going to explore solutions today, and we think there are solutions. There are exciting solutions. They'll be very challenging for us to implement those solutions, and even if we agree, even if we came up with a clear consensus of what needs to be done, it doesn't mean that the problems are going to go away, because all of you who are involved in education know the levels of the challenges that we face in reorienting our teachers, in the regulations of the system we're in the understanding of the parents who have certain expectations that are come from the past, from when they were in school, and what worked for them, which is not going to work for their children in this age. So no easy solutions and no idea that we can walk out of this knowing exactly what to do. But I hope we will come away with some clear idea of the direction we should go in. And we'll learn something from people here in other countries who are doing things that we can learn from. And I hope with the creative spirit that India has always had, we can be doing things that can become a model for other countries as well. And I'd just like to illustrate that with a few things that I hope we'll discuss more today, during the day. What do we know about learning? There's a national research laboratory in the US that has been studying for the last 60 years the learning process. And they've come up with what they call a learning pyramid. If you look up learning pyramid on the web, you'll get a beautiful color drawing of this pyramid. It's somewhere in my presentation, but I'll give you the idea. The average retention rates from learning in a mode like this, where somebody's talking to everybody else, it's a passive, one-way broadcasting system. Over time, the average retention rates are about 5%. What we take out and hope to remember in the future. If you read about the same thing, where we've got the book in front of us and we can interact with it, we can go back to it and all, the retention levels go up to about 10%. If you get into groups where you can interact, where you can exchange ideas, discuss them, ask and answer questions, exchange laterally among peers, it goes up to about 25%. And of course, these are just general averages for any type of subject over millions and millions of people. There can be exceptions in the individual case, but I think it carries a message. If you instead, or rather in addition, you involve in activities, case studies, problem solving, practical applications of different types of the knowledge that you're dealing with, the learning outcomes can go up to 50% or more. But in all the studies it shows, the maximum learning comes from teaching others. And all of you who are educators in the room, I think you know that. When we try to communicate to others, we learn most. Because you have to take the viewpoint of others, you have to think from their point of view, you have to answer their questions. So essentially, we've got a system of education that maximizes the learning of the instructors. Think about it. No wonder we think this is a great system, because we're learning so much. But the goal of this system is not maximizing the learning of the instructors, it's maximizing the learning of everybody. And so flipping that system, Prince referred to it very briefly. He said shifting from competition to collaboration. You're going to hear from other speakers about peer-to-peer education. I come from Napa, California, where about 25 years ago, the city of Napa, at the local level, decided that we need to do better in our educational system. And they brought together representatives from about 20 companies, advanced companies in the Silicon Valley area. We're just at the northern tip of Silicon Valley. And they said, what could we do differently to better prepare our students for employment and careers in your companies or in companies like yours? And they got many, many very valid suggestions. But the two most important were, you say, you teach students for 12 years or 16 years to work alone and compete with each other. Where when they come into our companies, they almost never do anything alone, and we want them to cooperate with each other. And they haven't learned anything about really how do you communicate and cooperate and work with others. So why don't you consider a fundamental change? And the Napa School did that. They changed the format in the class where they broke the classes into groups of 4 students who were learning from each other, and the teacher became a facilitator for that process. And each student had responsibilities within the group to learn and communicate, and they did it in a cooperative way. And it may not be perfect, but the system was so successful that today more than 120 school districts in the US have adopted this approach and other techniques, which I don't have time to describe here, project-based learning and others. But under the recognition that what we need is not just a little tweaking with the existing system, but look at fundamentally how we can reorganize it. And of course, with the advent of online learning and quality of online learning, with a YouTube or Khan Academy, the possibilities become much, much greater. And we hope to explore some of those today. So I thank you all for coming. We welcome the interaction with you. We look forward to what we can learn and work with you in the future. Thank you.